Today, I'm going to try and answer the number one question I had when I was deciding whether or not to get a canopy. How much does it all cost? Or in my case, now that mine's pretty much finished, how much did it cost to get it to the stage it is now? What's up guys? When I was doing my initial research before getting my canopy, I watched pretty much every video I could find about how much people were paying for their canopies and their fit outs. To be honest, this was a pretty terrifying exercise because there's some expensive fit outs out there. There was no way I could afford to pay what most people were paying, so I made it my mission to do my research and to find ingredients that sat in that sweet spot between quality and affordability. And of course, do a fair bit of DIY along the way. Now, everyone's canopy requirements are different, but hopefully giving you a full rundown of how much mine will cost to build should give you a rough idea if you're wanting to achieve something similar to this. So let's kick things off with the canopy itself. As most of you already know, this is a 2.1 by 1.8 meter checker plate canopy from MRT. I've had it on the back for about 2.5 years now, and I'm absolutely stoked with it. It's been holding up really well over the past few years. I've actually done a full review video that I'll link in the description down below if you're interested. When I got it, I paid about $3,900, and that was including a few extra upgrades, such as the internal roof bracing to withstand a bit of extra weight up top, those 3 roof racks, and also the full lift-off system, including the legs. That was a couple of years ago now, and since then the prices have gone up as everything does. So this exact same package today costs about $4,400, which is still pretty cheap compared to most other canopies on the market. Now, if you have a dual cab ute, then you're in luck because the exact same package, so with the same upgrades, costs about $400 less for the dual cab version. Now, other than the extras I mentioned earlier, I did also add their remote central locking kit as an extra after the fact, and that full conversion kit retails for $750. Moving above the canopy, I've got my dune rooftop tent, which I absolutely love. This is the 120 model, which is the smaller of the 2 available sizes. I bought it for $1,000 a few years ago, and since then the price has been jumping all over the place. So for the past year or so, it's been sitting at around the $1,300 mark. I know the website lists the full price as being like $2,000, but you can just ignore that because it's never full price. But just in the past week, they've put it on like super sale and dropped it down to $900. Now that's the cheapest I've ever seen it, so if you're wanting to pick one up, now's the perfect time to do so. Hopefully it's still on sale when you're watching this video. Also up top is my 2.5 by 2.5 meter King's awning from 4-wheel-drive Supercenter, which cost me a whopping $125. Now, right now on the Supercenter website, they seem to be selling for about $180, but just wait for one of their regular sales and you should get it for less. Now, people tend to hate on the King's awnings a fair bit, but I mean, for $125, it does the job. I've left it set up through some pretty intense storms in the past that have like bent it out of shape and dropped poles down, but still sets up and works perfectly fine. So you can't really go wrong for the money. A bit of a tip when buying from Supercenter as well is to try and predict what you're going to be buying over the next 6 months or so and try and wrap them into the one order. Now, when I bought my awning, I also bought my drawers, my second battery, my battery box, my DC-DC charger, and my tire deflator. I put them all in the one order to save on shipping costs. Okay, let's start on the interior with the kitchen side. So we'll move left to right starting with the fridge because I'll save the headboard for the 12-volt section. So my fridge is a very old 40-litre Waco. It was actually a hand-me-down from my parents and it still works brilliantly. Now, I was pretty lucky to not have to buy a fridge, but if you wanted to pick up something very similar second-hand, you'd be looking at around $450. Moving along, we start getting into the DIY stuff. So this is my custom kitchen bench with built-in sink and running water, and this whole unit, not including the slide-out cooker, cost me about $170 to build. So that's the full kitchen bench, all this metal framing, little cubby hole under the sink, the collapsible sink itself, the tap, and also the water tank and hoses as well. My Coleman Hyperflame stove was actually a Christmas gift, but retails for about $180. Now, it might seem like a lot of money for a cooker, but having been through at least 4 other brands in the past and having had them all die on me, this one, in my opinion, is well worth the money. I've had it for about 2.5 years now and it still works fantastically, other than the piezo ignition, which is a bit touch and go nowadays. Moving behind the kitchen bench, we get to my main food pantry. Now, believe it or not, this is made using a $14 shelf from Bunnings. Actually, it's made using half a $14 shelf from Bunnings. I then just made up a simple back and sides, wrapped it in a bit of carpet, and built up this simple sliding door system on the front using acrylic sheets. Bit of a funny story behind this pantry. When I first made it, I built the initial doors out of thin MDF to try and keep costs down. Not really thinking it through properly, because the second a bit of moisture built up in this tracking system, that MDF just swelled up and the doors became stuck shut. So, learnt my lesson and built the new doors out of acrylic. So all up, this whole pantry probably costs about $80 or $90 to build, and most of that cost just comes down to the acrylic sheet, because that's quite a pricey material. Last piece of the puzzle for the kitchen side is my slide out pantry. Now, this has been a hard one to price up because there's so much going on, and I'll leave a link to the full build video in the description down below if you want to know more about the pantry build. But price-wise, I've worked out that it costs between $250 and $300 for all the materials required to build it. Now, if you were to build a pantry, no doubt it would look significantly different to mine, because your needs and wants are going to be different to mine and the next guy's, but you should be pretty safe estimating around that $250 to $300 mark. Anyway, that's all done for the kitchen side. Let's move on to the back. To be honest, the back isn't really worth talking about, but I didn't want to leave any door unopened. So, welcome to the back of the canopy. On the left-hand side here, that's just the slide-out pantry that we've already talked about. And on the right-hand side, this shelving unit is just the other half of that $14 shelf from Bunnings that makes up the main kitchen pantry. Again, I put a simple back and sides, wrapped it in carpet, and for this one, I've also strengthened it here and here just to withstand the weight of that water tank. And all up, this unit probably costs about $30 or $40 to build. Okay, on to the final side. First up, we've got my heavy Titan drawers. These are the 1070 model and they cost $400 from 4WD Supercenter. And for that price, they are brilliant. Last but not least, we've got the 12-volt system. Now, with most canopy fit-outs, the 12-volt system is usually one of the more expensive parts, and I suppose with mine, that's no different. So as with everything else, I've tried to keep costs at a bare minimum. So what I've gone for is a 100 amp hour King's AGM deep cycle battery within a King's battery box, and that's charged using a CTEK D250S DC-DC charger. Those 3 components came as a combo deal from 4WD Supercenter for $660. Now, I know a lot of people tend to stay away from the cheaper batteries and DC-DC chargers, but if it eases your mind at all that gear's been working flawlessly for about 2.5 years. The rest of the 12-volt system just consists of a Bluetooth battery monitor, a cheap switch panel from eBay, a bunch of wiring, and some cheap LED strip lighting. And all of that cost about $130 in total. As far as 12-volt setups go, mine is extremely basic, but honestly, it works fine for me. Ready for some scary maths? So if I add up the price of everything in my fit out by today's prices, it would cost me about $9,000 to build a full replica of this canopy today. Now, as you saw, I've done everything I can to keep the full setup as budget friendly as possible, and yet that's still a serious amount of money. It kind of makes you realize how some of those full custom canopy and fit out packages can easily cost up between the 20 and 25K mark. In my opinion, a setup like this is well worth the 9K investment because it makes going away camping ridiculously easy, still lets me use my ute as a ute by leaving the canopy lifted off and in the garage at home, and if I ever want to upgrade the vehicle, I can keep the same canopy and just drop it onto another car. One thing worth considering is that you don't necessarily have to fork out all that money all at once. I camped in an empty metal box for months before slowly starting to build out my fit out piece by piece. And it probably took me close to 2 years to get it to the stage it is now. Anyway guys, I hope that was eye-opening and at least gave you a bit of an indication at how much this stuff actually costs. Canopy setups can get pretty expensive, but if you're willing to spend a bit of time in the garage making a few bits and pieces yourself, then you can save a fair bit of money. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.